Hi everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and my first question this week comes from Leonard Euler1, who says, "Don't think I forgot about my previous question, Steve. I'm super excited about the new Cosmos series, and so please, by all means, let us know next week what you thought of the first episode." Oh, I love the first episode. As most of you know who watch my stuff regularly, Carl Sagan's Cosmos, the original series, I mean, it's not really that much of an exaggeration to say that that show changed my life. I mean, my whole way of thinking, my awe at the wonder of the universe, my attraction to science and astronomy and things like that, are traceable back to me watching that show at a very, very young age. I have this very strong memory of sitting in front of my television in the living room with my parents watching Cosmos while it was being rerun during one of the times in the early 80s. And watching the episode where Carl Sagan is sitting in a diner and he's using salt and pepper shakers to illustrate the way planets orbit stars. I remember that. And so, of course, I was looking forward to the new version just with great anticipation, and it did not disappoint. Neil deGrasse Tyson is just such a perfect choice to host that show. His voice, his character, his attitude, just the whole thing, the way he's soft-spoken yet direct and unapologetic about the things he's saying. Very charming, very relaxing, very comfortable presence. And the music, it's scored like a Hollywood movie. It has a big romantic, like, cinema score by Alan Silvestri, who is a big romantic movie composer. And, I mean, the whole thing just sang to me. I just loved it. There were moments in it throughout the first hour that almost moved me to tears. I mean, it was that good. So I don't think I could give it a better review. I mean, I just loved it, and I can't wait for the second episode and all of the subsequent ones. It was just magnificent. Mark Evan, hey Steve, longtime fan, first time question asker, haha. I was curious about your reaction to the claims that abiogenesis is this weak part of evolution that was cut off in order for scientists to bolster the evidence supporting evolution. This is patently absurd, of course, but I can't help but wonder how a literate would try and respond to this objection. My response would be one of, "Are you fucking kidding me?" and explaining the origins of life and explaining the growth and transformation of said life are just inherently different topics. But I would be curious to see your response as well. In a way, I can see how the sort of evolutionary conspiracy would attract and compel some for a millisecond. Evolution certainly has led us to some ideas about the start of life, and to say that it necessarily presupposes the beginning is incorrect, though sensical at a glance. What would you say? I would say you're right. I think that they are separate fields of study, and I think that that's appropriate, and I don't think that it's appropriate to argue that we should reject evolution or have some sort of undue level of skepticism about the facts of evolution because we haven't solved the problem of precisely how the first life forms arose. And that's a little bit like saying we wouldn't be able to trust anything derived from the science of geology if we didn't know how the earth formed. And actually, of course, there aren't very many, except with the exception of maybe some young earth creationists, which are a small group. Most Christians and most people who would quibble with evolution don't have similar problems with, say, geology, with a well-established physical science. That you don't hear people complaining when students are taught geology in high school, even though these people might have a very different idea of where the earth came from as opposed to an atheist or someone with a more secular viewpoint, or someone who accepts the scientific explanation of how the earth was formed. So no, the one does not require the other. And the other thing I would say to someone who says that the lack of an answer for where life came from is somehow a strike against evolution or a reason to doubt evolution, I would say that just because we haven't answered the question doesn't mean that all answers are on the table and that every possibility is equally likely. Just because we haven't nailed down the precise answer of how life came about or where it came from or whatever, how life originated on Earth, that doesn't mean there's any reason to accept as credible a religious explanation. It just doesn't work that way. There's no reason to believe that life could not have arisen completely naturally on the Earth. There is no barrier to prevent incredibly complex chemical reactions from crossing some sort of a threshold into becoming life. People like to mystify it, especially religious folks. They like to mystify it. They like to think of life in these mystical, magical terms where life is some ethereal thing that just sort of that lifeless organisms were somehow imbued with something, and that's just, there's no reason to think that that is true at all. That's probably not how it happens. The way it probably happens is that molecules interact in increasingly complex ways. They form increasingly complex structures that do different things, and eventually it reaches a point where that thing is alive. And it's probably not a hard, solid black line separating non-life from life when you get to that point. It's probably, I would say it's reasonable to think of it as analogous to the process of speciation. When you look at speciation in evolution, there's not a point where the parent is the ancestor and then the child is the descendant. It's a much blurrier process. It's a much gradual process, even moving from one species to another. There's not a point where you can nail it down and go, aha, this is where this particular species arose. And the same thing is probably true of the first living organisms. If you could go back in time and examine the chemical soup, the genetic soup that the first life may have originated in, you might find examples of little bubbles of molecules that might be, they're just that close to being what you would consider being alive, but they're not. And you might find some that you could go either way on. It's not like there was a moment where all of a sudden there was no life and now there was life. It was probably a very gradual process. Gala Kills. Hey Steve, you mentioned last episode that you were looking at some of your older stuff in order to see how you used to talk and whatnot. Did you find any ideas or positions that you changed your mind about? In other words, do you think there will be a day that you can watch a very old video of yours and completely disagree? I find that a person's views shift as they get older, and I was wondering what you thought about that and how that may apply to the idea that the older you get, the more conservative you get. Any truth to that, you think? There's certainly truth to it regarding some people. I don't think it's true for me, at least not at this point. That is something you hear an awful lot. The older you get, the more conservative you get. And often, many of us who are more liberally minded we've often had the experience of older, more conservative relatives say to us, well, just wait till you get older. Just wait till you're my age. You'll see things a little differently. So far in my life, the opposite has been true. I have actually gotten more liberal the older I have gotten. My conservative phase was from about age 12 to age 15 or 16 was sort of the tail end of it. And I've been growing progressively more progressive ever since. There's nothing really in any of my older YouTube videos that I would say I've changed my mind about in any big, important way. I mean, I've only been doing YouTube videos for a few years, and I was relatively fully formed when I started doing them. Like, I'm not that different of a person right now than I was when I started doing YouTube videos. But if you compare me right now at age 33 to me at age 13 or 14, yeah, there's a huge difference. And I think a lot of that is due to age and growing and having experiences and getting to know people from different backgrounds and reading more and being more educated and learning to be more open-minded about things and learning to entertain different points of view and all this other stuff that have an effect and that change your way of thinking and change your mind about things. So yeah, it's certainly possible that in 20 or 30 years I'll look back on, one of these videos that I've done, perhaps many of these videos that I've done, and I'll think, what were you thinking? But the pattern so far in my life has not been towards conservatism at all. It's been towards liberalism. Ray John H. Do you like any of Larry Clark's movies? Which ones? And do you think he is a pervert? The only two films of Larry Clark that I have ever seen are Kids and Bully, and I loved them both. I admire both films greatly. I don't think he's a pervert. There are film critics I know who feel like his movies are basically pornography, that they have no artistic value, they have no socially redeeming qualities. I don't see them that way. I see them as very having really great artistic merit. I love his style. I love his very straightforward, matter of fact visual style. He is usually able to get these incredibly naturalistic performances from his actors. I just think he's a terrific filmmaker. And again, he's made 9 or 10 films. I've only seen 2, so it's a limited set that I'm drawing these conclusions based on. But the 2 films of his that I've seen, again, Kids and Bully, were both just absolutely excellent. So no, I don't think he's a pervert, and I think he's, based on what I've seen, an excellent filmmaker. LJ Man. Hey Steve, wanted to ask your opinion on the 2003 Hulk movie. This would be Ang Lee's Hulk, and this is, along with Superman Returns, the the subject of my 2 great contrarian opinions as a critic of superhero movies. Like Superman Returns, Ang Lee's Hulk was broadly dismissed by many serious film critics and also by many fans and many comic book nerds. And my reaction was exactly the opposite. I loved it. I still love it to this day. I've watched it I don't know how many times. I am a huge admirer of Ang Lee's Hulk. I think it's a beautiful, lyrical movie. It's visually stunning. It has a wonderful, poetic, lyrical, visual style. I don't know how it didn't get at least an Oscar nomination for Best Editing, because I, for one, thought that the split screen technique that they used was terrific and worked really well. And just the amount of work that went into that, and doing it and having it make sense, even if, I don't see how that movie wasn't nominated for Best Editing. And it's just good performances, a good script. I loved the way the anger of the Hulk was folded in with the child abuse and the relationship between Bruce Banner and his father. That's something that is sort of borrowed from the comics. Peter David wrote some Hulk comics that sort of established a root of the Hulk's anger in a childhood trauma from of Bruce Banner. So that, it has roots in the comics, but it goes in different directions. Just a really, really artful, meditative, serious movie about a guy who gets angry and turns into like a 10-foot tall green rage monster. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was great. I know people bitch about the special effects, but honestly, if I'm carried away by the story and I care about the characters and I care about what's happening, I couldn't give less of a fuck about the special effects. I watched the movie. I think the special effects look fine. So there you go. I don't know. Huge, huge fan of Ang Lee's Hulk. Wise Dragon 2012. I was in a debate with a fellow atheist friend of mine who was ragging on science and the scientific method as being dogmatic. I tried pointing out that science by its own nature would contradict that, but he disagreed. Any thoughts? How might you respond to a statement like that? The scientific method isn't dogmatic because the scientific method has been shown to work. Dogma is something that you write and you set in stone and nothing will ever change it. It's not really based on anything other than the presupposition that it just has to be true. And that's not how science works. And that's not how the scientific method works. The reason why we do science the way we do it, the reason why we follow the scientific method and we try to derive our conclusions from the data and we test claims and we look for evidence and we try to interpret things correctly according to an unbiased perspective as much as we can attain that, is because that sort of thing works. Because it has worked over and over and over again. And it has multiplied human knowledge uncountably. It has multiplied human knowledge far, far beyond our ability to even reckon how much it has increased our knowledge. It works. It's not dogmatic. People who say things like science is dogmatic or naturalism is dogmatic or naturalism is a religion, they completely misunderstand the concepts. They completely misunderstand how science works. Science is done the way it's done because it has been proven to work. And if anybody can come up with a better way, a more efficient method of deriving truth about the world and finding things out and getting reliable knowledge about the world other than the scientific method, then tell us the method and show us that method is better. Although in a way that would be using the scientific method, wouldn't it? I mean, it's not so, it's difficult to even imagine how else we would do it. These people who say, well, it's dogmatic, science is just as much of a religion as Christianity. How else do we do it? If you don't use the scientific method, how else do you do it? It sounds to me it's mostly just an excuse for people who want unscientifically derived knowledge to be accepted. People who don't have evidence for their claims but want people to accept their claims anyway. And they cry and bitch and whine about, oh, it's scientific dogmatism, when the truth is they just have got nothing, but they still want to have their facts as respected as demonstrated scientific facts. Cyril B. Hey Steve, I know you're a supporter of normal feminism, as am I, but what's your opinion on radical feminism? The ones that want to ban pornography and insist that PIV, penis and vagina, sex is always wrong and should always be considered rape because no woman wants a penis inside her vagina, she's just brainwashed into thinking she does, among other crazy ideologies. I guess part of me just gets a kick out of it because I seriously doubt it'll ever catch on. Part of me is sad because all the true rad femmes out there have probably gone through something extremely traumatic to cause these extreme opinions, and part of me is slightly alarmed because it seems to be a rapidly growing movement. Well, I don't really share your alarm. I don't think it's ever going to be that influential of a movement socially, but the rest of what you have to say is pretty much where I come down on it. Obviously, I disagree with the principles. I disagree with the idea that all sex is automatically, unavoidably rape. I disagree with the very strident anti-male tone. But at the same time, and I've said this before, I can understand where that kind of anger comes from. I see the misogynistic and sexist parts of our culture that still exist today, and if you go back and look at history, they're even more prevalent and more brutalizing than they are today. So I mean, I can't agree with the school of thought. I can't agree with the goals or with the claims or the opinions of a radical feminist like you describe, but I can at least understand, in a sense, where someone like that is coming from. I can understand the frustration and the anger and the pain and the abuse, both maybe on an individual and also of the class of people that would give rise to something like that, even though I find it unreasonable and unjustified and wrong. But yeah, I don't think it's very popular. I really don't. I don't think it's very widespread. Since I started making occasional pro-feminist declarations on videos, I've actually been contacted and had conversations and even befriended many, many people who identify as feminists, women and men. None of them have been radical, man-hating feminists. I haven't gotten angry comments from radical feminists on my videos. I know that there are people like that. I know that group exists, but I don't think they are nearly as numerous or influential as some people fear they are. And as I said, I completely disagree with them. I don't share their goals. I don't share their view but I do have a kind of sympathy for them because I can at least appreciate and acknowledge that there is some, underneath all that vitriol, there is something like a legitimate source that is at the root of all of that. What am I going to do for a lightning round? So, I don't even thought of anything.
The lightning round. Rapid fire questions. Glib and adequate answers.
Jarb2104. Hey Steve, have you ever cared about the people that say first in comments everywhere? No. The Spariton. Hey Steve, do you think Republicans will ever accept human-caused global warming as a scientific fact? And if they do, what will they do about it? I'm sure they'll accept it eventually, but by the time they accept it, liberals will either have done something about it already, or it will be too late for anybody to do anything about it. So either way, the Republicans won't have to do anything about it. Thomas Brady, here's a goofy one. According to Benjamin Franklin, beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. This is about as good as apologetics get. So let's imagine for a moment you were putting forward this argument. What would you substitute for beer? I don't know. Maybe beer's old pal pizza. Pizza is pretty awesome. If beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy, pizza, no less so, my friend. No less so. Siri A. No. Hey, Steve, do you smell that? What is that? Oh. Oh, God. Oh, that's not good. Oh. Ooh. Ooh. God damn. You're right. I don't know, but that shit is nasty. Oh, God. Let's just move on. Radical Bacon. What's your favorite smell? Oh, a freshly blown out match. Beautiful smell. Tovarin Sacerity. Your favorite Star Trek series was Voyager. It's probably the female captain that gets my attention. I'm sorry, I misread that. Torvarin Sacerity. Actually, Torvarin Sacerity. I knew I would get it right. This is the week I didn't do the Jaegerbomb. My favorite Star Trek series was Voyager. It's probably the female captain that gets my attention. Am I just wrong about this? Well, it depends on what your reasons for the female captain getting your attention are. I mean, having a female captain is a nice idea. The problem with Voyager is that the female captain that they gave that show was a complete idiot. Patrick Mann. Steve, Pabst Blue Ribbon or Natty Boh? Oh, God. Can I choose my own urine? Is that a choice? Okay. Of the two, I guess I would go with Pabst, but I would drink it real fast. The Unknown Stranger. I have 2 questions. 1, what is your middle name? 2, are there any conspiracy theories or related things you do believe in? My middle name is Clay, and no, there are not. All right, that's it for the questions. Before I get out of here, I want to do a shout out. The shout out this week is a little different than I typically do. I usually give shout outs to people who are trying to build the audience for their channel. The recipient of the shout out this week is someone who's trying to rebuild his audience after he recently lost his channel, both of his channels actually. The shout out this week goes to Dick Coughlin. And his new channel is Dick Dynasty 666. So if you've been a Coughlin fan before and you notice that his channels, both of his channels, were recently taken down, that's where he's at. That's where you can go to find Coughlin. Dick Dynasty 666. He recently lost both his Coughlin 616 channel and his Coughlin 000 channel due to what many of us feel was a malicious flagging campaign undertaken by some not very impressive people who could do with thicker skins and maybe less time on their hands. Many of you watching this may not have heard of Coughlin before, and if that's the case, I urge you to check out his new channel and see if it's your cup of tea. Many of you, in fact most of you, I would assume, have already heard of Dick Coughlin before, and you've probably made up your mind about him already. And you either like him or you don't like him, or you're somewhere in the middle there. Whether you think that Coughlin is great, whether you think that Coughlin is an asshole, I'm not going to try to change your mind about him. But I will say this. If it weren't for Coughlin doing his thing, I might not be sitting here doing my thing. And the reason for that is Coughlin was one of the YouTubers, particularly one of the atheist YouTubers, that really caught my attention when I first started paying attention to all of this stuff. When I first started thinking about maybe wanting to become involved in YouTube and wanting to be an atheist on YouTube, Coughlin was one of the guys whose stuff that I watched. And I didn't like everything that he did, and I still don't agree with everything he does or everything he says. His tone is different from mine. Some of the things he said are things I would not have said. But what I saw in his videos was an honesty and a passion and a sincerity and a genuine quality. I believe what he says, and I believe that he is who he presents. And when he takes after someone and rips someone a new asshole for something, for some video that they posted or something that they said, whether I feel that it's warranted or not, he does that because that is what he feels and that is his passion. And I cannot help but admire that. And he's not the only person who inspired me to do this. I mean, there are big ones like Dark Matter, who I owe a great deal for shout-outs he's given to me and kindness he's shown me in the past. And The Thinking Atheist, Wildwood Claire is a big one who I've always loved. But Coughlin is right up there. And one of the great milestones of my YouTube career was when I checked my email and I had the notification that that Dick Coughlin had subscribed to my YouTube channel. That was a big moment for me. And I've gotten to know him a little since then. We've interacted. We've talked on Skype once or twice. We've sent private messages back and forth to each other. He has never, whatever you think of him, no matter how big of a jerk you think he is, if that's what you think, no matter how big of a prick you think he has never been anything other than a friend to me. And it's the least I can do to give him a shout out. His work has meant a lot to me. He as just a guy, just as a dude, has meant a lot to me. And if you don't like him, that's fine. You don't have to. I'm not asking you to. But I'm telling you, Dick Dynasty 666 is where he is. And if you want him, that's where you can find him. And you know what else? What I haven't mentioned while I've been sucking his dick here is that he's funny as hell. I think. He's incredibly funny. He's just a lacerating wit. And I just love the guy. I love you, Dick. And I'm glad that I can help in any way I can to help you rebuild your audience. So Dick Dynasty 666. Everybody, if you haven't heard of him, go check him out. See if he's your cup of tea. If you already know him and you like him and you haven't heard yet, Dick Dynasty 666. Go and subscribe. That's the shout out this week. Dick Coughlin. I salute you. That's it for this week. I will be back to do this all over again next week without the act of virtual public fellatio in the shout out, most likely. I will be answering more of your questions, assuming, of course, that you ask. Because for me to do that, you do have to ask. So please, leave a comment on this video. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious, nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of them as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. I'll see you.